Welcome to CARDESIGN.ACADEMY. Today I'm going to show you another rendering demo in VRED based on a model I built in Gravity Sketch. This is an exterior and interior for a full-size electric pickup truck, which I call Ionic T. And I wanted to show you today how I generated some pretty cool images in VRED. I wanted to show you a few tricks as well. So let's just start off the bat. This is the exterior. There's a full interior, but I wanted to show you how I imported, assigned shaders, and set up the environment to generate some really cool exterior and interior images. So to get started right away, I'll just show you how I imported the model. And so basically, when I export out of Gravity Sketch, I try to keep the exterior and interior separate. And the reason I do that is because it enables me to isolate certain parts of the vehicle for shading, for lighting, and for certain camera angles. So as you can see, the model imported in an incorrect orientation. So I'm going to fix all of that right away. So you can see these are the 5 components that I imported separately, a separate file. So I have the exterior, I have the interior, and then given that this interior has multiple driving configurations, I have like a driving mode and a mobile office mode. I imported those as separate as well. And you'll see in a few minutes how that works. And then cut lines. The reason I do cut lines separately is because it enables me to bake the light and shadows onto the body without the cut lines generating any sort of weird shadows on the surface. So let's start with just correcting the orientation. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new group. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to create group, and I'm going to call this demo group. And actually I'm going to call it demo transform, because this whole group is going to get transformed into the correct orientation. So demo transform. No need to, it's not a code or anything. I'm just doing that for my own sanity here. And then I'm just going to grab all of these elements and drop them into this group. Okay. Then I'm going to select the whole group, and as you can see, the whole vehicle is selected. I'm going to go under interaction at the top menu here, transform. This is going to give me my transform menu, and I can numerically type any sort of transformation that I want. So I'm going to do rotate X on the X-axis 90 degrees, and that sets it on the ground. It sets it in the correct orientation. Now it's not quite on the ground plane, so I'm just going to select transform at the top of the menu. I can hold the shift key, grab the arrow, and just bring it down till the tires are just touching the ground. Now, as you can see, this is the straight OBJ import. This is the straight file as it imported from Gravity Sketch. So you can see that all the data is totally intact. The shaders that I assigned in Gravity Sketch are also fully intact. So while these are not the shaders I'm ultimately going to use in VRED, at least I've already defined what is body, what is black, what is rubber, what is glass, etc. So so it just makes the job much easier. Now within the interior, I'm going to also, I have these multiple driving configurations. So I'm going to just turn off the exterior. I'm going to turn off the cut lines. So as you can see, I have multiple driving configurations showing simultaneously. What I want to do is be able to quickly switch between the two. So I'm going to within this group, I'm going to right click, create switch. Okay, and I'm going to call this interior modes. And I'm going to grab the two configurations, and I'm going to drop them into the switch here. Now you can see they disappeared. If I open the interior modes switch and I check one of these boxes, you can see now just the driving mode is showing. But if I check the other box, the driving mode shuts off. So this is now a switch. I can just switch back and forth between the two. So that makes it really convenient. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to bake light and shadows. Now I'm going to do this separately. So I'm going to start with baking the. I'm going to go into the driving mode here, and I'm going to. Okay, yeah. So under scene, I'm going to bake light and shadows. I'm going to set it just to ambient occlusion, medium quality, and hit calculate missing. So I've actually decided to bake it in the driving configuration. So yeah, let's go ahead. I'm going to select the interior and the interior modes, and under scene, I'm going to bake light and shadows, ambient occlusion, medium quality, and then I'm going to hit calculate missing. So after about 10 minutes, you can see the shadows have baked. Now, what is baking? What baking light and shadows does is it essentially texture maps shadows directly onto the paint surfaces. So you'll see there something has happened in which some of the surfaces have just turned completely black. The reason for that is I did not check the normals before baking. This is something that you need to do, and I wanted to show this to you because if I go to visualization vertex face rendering, you'll see that some of the surfaces are green and some of them are purple. The purple surfaces you're actually seeing the inside of the surface, not the outside. So in order to flip the normals, you're going to have to go through and hold the Alt key and right click on each of those surfaces to change them to, just to flip the direction of those surfaces. And once you do that, everything will bake just fine. So another thing, if I go back to realistic rendering, so another thing that happens is you'll see it looks kind of splotchy, like all these like sort of dark spots, right? What you have to do is actually go in and individually unbake and rebake those surfaces. So just as an example, I'll show you what happens here. So I'm going to select this surface and make it disappear. I'm also going to select these surfaces and make them disappear. It's very tedious and a little bit painstaking, but it will pay off dividends once you're ready to go and render, because it'll make the renderings go much quicker. So what I might do is create a group called ribs. That'll make it easier for me. So I just take all of these and drop them into the layer called ribs. Okay, so that leaves me with this top pad. You can see it's very splotchy. So in order to get rid of the splotchiness, I'm going to select that piece. Under Bake, Light and Shadows, I'm going to clear active. That unbakes it, basically. Then I'm just going to rebake just that one part. Okay, so now it's baked. You can see it's got a little bit deeper shadow quality to it. And it doesn't look like much, but it all adds up. So now the ribs, I'm going to select all the ribs together. And I'm going to unbake those. So clear active. And then I'm going to turn off, I'm actually going to turn off this instrument panel. And I'm going to bake these separately. Okay. And then once I turn on the instrument panel again, you'll see it's got a much cleaner look to it. Those edges, you don't see all the little splotchy marks as these objects intersect each other. So now when I go in and turn on the top pad here, you can see there's some splotch lines along there. So I'm going to select the instrument panel again, turn it off, and what I want to do is have this object cast a shadow onto those ribs. So I'm going to clear active and then calculate missing again and just bake that top pad there. Okay, and you can see now it's starting to generate a bit of an ambient shadow onto those ribs. So now when I turn the whole thing back on, it all looks really nice. So I'm going to do the same for these ribs here. I'm going to drop those. I'm going to drop those into the ribs rib section here. So I'm going to clear active. I'm going to take this guy here. I'm going to clear active and turn off the ribs again. Calculate missing again. So I just got to go through and do this with each of these items. Okay, so now I'm going to show you, I'm going to start applying some shaders. So I wanted to show you something really cool, which is how to apply a wood grain texture. So we use a technique called labels. So I want this surface here, this armrest surface, to be a wood grain pattern. So I'm going to go into my collection here. I keep a folder full of interesting textures. I have one called light brown wooden textured background. This is just something I found on the web. And to apply a label, it's as simple as take the file, drag it and drop it to the object, and then this little menu comes up, and then I just say add decal. And there you can see the wood grain is now applied to the surface. I want to make the whole thing look like wood, plus I want to make the grain go in a different direction. So first thing I'm going to do is just scale up so this cube represents how much surface is being exposed to this label. So for example, if I scale it up to up here, you can see the label disappears. So everything that's intersecting that cube with that shader is going to get the label. I want to make the wood grain go the other way, so I just grab the circle here and I turn it 90 degrees. And then I want to just scale the whole thing up so that the entire object is wood. And then this little icon here that says texturing, it's that little checkerboard icon at the very top. Once I have it where I want it, I just click that and it turns off. So now the entire thing is wood. Now, if I wanted to add a UI element to the or like a screen element to the screen. So let's say let's go ahead and put a glossy black shader on there, right? And let's say I have an image that I want to put on there, a user interface image. Same thing goes for labels, but the key is with the label is you want to have a PNG file with a transparent background. So under UI images, I have a collection here of images. So for example, let's say I have a gauge cluster, right? And I want to put a gauge cluster on there. So again, I just drag and drop that on there. Okay, add decal. So very quickly you can apply textures and labels to things. Okay, so with the exterior, we want to make this thing look like it's sitting on the ground. So to do that, I'm going to create a shadow plane. So I'm going to right click on our scene graph. I'm going to say create geometry, create a plane. This is in millimeters, so I'm going to set it to 10,000 millimeters. The truck itself is probably about 6 meters long. Okay, so now I have this plane. Using the transform tool, I'm just going to move it till it's more centered, and I'm going to set it down as close as I can to the ground plane. Okay, so how is that a shadow? I want this to look like a cast shadow underneath the truck. What we're going to do is we're going to apply a shadow shader to it. Create material, shadow. I'm going to slide it over the plane, and as you can see, the plane actually, just disappeared. It's actually still there. If I select it, it's still there. What we're going to do is using bake, light, and shadows. We're gonna set it now to light and shadows. We're gonna bake the shadow of the truck onto that plane. This time I'm going to turn on subdivision, and I'm going to set it to medium quality. I'm going to set the light and shadows to high quality and hit calculate missing. So you can see very quickly you get this very nice cast shadow under the vehicle. So I'm going to do the same for the rest of the exterior. So I'm going to grab the exterior, and this time I'm going to turn off subdivision. I'm just going to do ambient occlusion again. Before I do that, though, however, I am going to check my my normals here. So let's just see if yep, I do have a number of surfaces that are facing the wrong way. So let's do that now. Get it out of the way. Okay, so everything is green. We're all good to go. So back to realistic rendering. I'm gonna select the entire exterior. Bake light and shadows. I want high quality ambient occlusion, no subdivision. So I'm gonna hit calculate missing. Okay, so everything is baked. So now I'm going to assign some materials and shaders. So I went and created a bunch of materials. Let's start off with the exterior. And I'm looking for metallic car paint. So I have a silver that I did. I could also do this more gunmetal color. Actually, that looks even better. And then for all the dark black or gray material, I have this plastic color, and I'm just gonna copy and paste that shader. I'm gonna give it a little bit brighter sheen to it. Then I have this another darker metallic paint for the wheels. Let's do this one. This is an almost black. So this is like a gloss, almost black, dark gray. And then I created an incandescent shader for the lighting. You can see it's got a little bit of a blue glow to it. You can see the actual color is slightly blue, and then the incandescent color is slightly blue as well. So it gives you like this white light with a slightly blue glow to it. And use the same for the fog lights as well. Then I have a glass shader. Put that on our exterior glass. So that covers the exterior. So now when I turn on the cut lines, because I baked them separately, or because I baked the body separately from the cut lines are now not casting any shadows. So the way I do cut lines is in Gravity Sketch, I build a series, I use the ink brush, and it comes in as a series of tube shapes. So they're not actual lines cut into the surface. They're actually, if you really look closely at them, they're tube shapes. You can see what they look like. So they're actually these tubes sitting outside of the body surface. But because I've given them this this sort of matte gray, non-reflective, transparent shader, it kind of reads from a distance as like a tape line drawn on the exterior surface. So it works out pretty well. It's a quick technique that I've developed for doing cut lines without having to break up the body surface. So now let's do the interior. So I'm going to turn off the exterior, turn off the cut lines, and let's assign some interior materials. So for the seats, I came up with this sort of cowhide saddle leather color. Gives it a rich sort of chocolatey look to it. Putting in a dark floor. Actually, maybe not that dark. Let's use our regular plastic shader. I've got a brushed metal shader for some of these metal bits here. So like these floor tracks, which are for the for the seats to articulate. So I can just copy and paste those. Same thing for the vents. Pedals. Now you can see I still have this problem with the shadow baking, and so as you remember, I selectively bake and unbake various components in order to get rid of those intersecting. The splotchiness comes from the shapes intersecting with each other, and so you have to sort of turn off certain shapes, rebake them, turn them back on, and rebake other shapes. So that's a bit of a tedious process. So so I will go ahead and skip the next hour or so of the demo and come back with a fully fleshed out baked interior. So after a bit of legwork, I've got a pretty nice representation of the interior. You can see I've applied a really nice wood grain to the center table and this portion of the IP, which actually comes out and becomes a desk. And then I use the texture mapping, the label tool, to apply some UI elements. So there's a keyboard graphic which I downloaded off the web. It's a PNG file, and so the idea is that this is either laser cut into the wood, or it might be even projected onto the wood through could be a laser projection from the screen. And then I got this, since this vehicle is like a mobile office for someone who runs a construction business, he's able to have sort of virtual meetings with his clients and suppliers. Maybe he has an architectural drawing up on the screen there, but basically this is now his environment where he can do business and on the job site. But then also there's a bit of a place to relax. So the back seat, the center table slides back, the back seat reclines, and there's a footrest, and he's got a bit of a place to relax as well. So the idea is that this guy, or the user of this vehicle, does most of their business on a job site or going to various job sites. So let's talk a little bit about environment. So I'm going to turn on the exterior again. And I wanted to show you a really cool trick for controlling the lighting on your vehicle, regardless of what's happening in the environment. So under Environments Transform, you have the ability to create an environment. That'll be an HDRI. That'll be an HDRI file. So I have a folder here where I keep a bunch of HDRI images that I've collected. A lot of them I get from HDRIhaven.com. It's a great website with lots of free HDRI environments. They have everything from natural environments to indoor environments to artificial studio environments. Lots of really cool stuff. Right now this is the standard studio setting for VRED. So then I had a couple of different environments which I downloaded. So this one is kind of a sunset desert scene. And then this one is it's more of like a sort of mountain forest scene. I thought this would be a really cool place to build a house. So, you know, if you were, you know, working for a client building a sustainable home in the mountains, a cabin in the mountains, this would be a great site for that. So, so then I actually downloaded a model of a house under construction, which I found on GrabCAD.com. So now I have this nice little scene where the truck is on a site, on a construction site, building for a client. So as you can see, the vehicle lighting has not changed. So what I'm going to do is I want it to take on the environment lighting. So I'm going to go down in my materials editor to the environment. Okay, and then I'm going to right click on that and say apply environment to all materials. Just click OK, and now you can see okay, yeah, so apply to all materials. Okay, so now you can see there's a really nice sort of lighting on everything. So now if you wanted to, let's say you know, I like this background, I like the trees, I like the mountains, but I don't like the way the sun is hitting the vehicle. What I can do then is duplicate the environment. So I'm gonna right click on the environment in the scene graph. I'm gonna edit, duplicate, and now I have two versions of the same environment. And what that means is I can take the second version of it and apply environment to all materials. And now what I can do is, you know, so let's say I like this composition here, okay? But I want to change the lighting on the vehicle. What I can do now is go into the transformation settings on the shader, and under rotate Z, I can change the lighting on the vehicle independently of the environment. So by having two versions of the same environment, one which is lighting the vehicle and the other which is lighting the background, I can have independent control of the lighting on that vehicle. So let's say I want to highlight certain surfaces, or make other surfaces, you know, blend into the background. I have now complete control to do that. So it works really well too for these kind of backgrounds where the lighting is somewhat overcast. So, you know, you can see you can't really tell from the trees and the mountains which way the sun is coming from. So you can kind of make the light come from whatever direction you want, and it's not really going to matter. And same thing goes for the cast shadow on the ground. You can see I'm still using the original baked shadow plane on the vehicle. It's still directly underneath the vehicle. It doesn't really matter because, you know, you still believe it, right? So from there I can just configure my camera. Let's say that's the look I want. I go under, if I want to save this view for later, under cameras, I can hit the plus symbol here, create a viewpoint, and let's call this double click on it, and I can call it front 3, 4. Okay, so now if I let's say I go to a different view and then I want to get back to that same view as before, I just go under viewpoints, I double click on front 3, 4, and it snaps right back to that view. So let's talk a little bit about field of view. Right now I have a field of view is the letter FOV. It's on the bottom corner of the screen right behind the CARDESIGN.ACADEMY logo. Right now it's set to 20. That's a setting I like for exteriors. Um, gives the car a nice stance. So let's say if I bump the number up to like 45, you can see the perspective gets a lot more extreme and dramatic, but at the same time the vehicle starts to look kind of narrow and precarious. Not a really great perspective I like to use. Now if I go the other way and I set it to like 10, now it becomes like this almost telephoto long distance view, right? Where the back wheel is almost as big as the front wheel. That's a neat view because the car's got a really nice, the truck's got a really nice wide stance. But then it starts to look a little bit static. So 20, I'd say between 20 and 30 is where I usually set the field of view for an exterior. So once I have it, where I want it, I set my viewpoint. And then I just hit my rendering button here. You have image size presets. You can set it to just about any major setting. I have it set to 4K. You have the export alpha channel option here. I'm going to turn it off because I want the complete image. And so here's a key difference between KeyShot and VRED. So KeyShot works entirely through ray tracing. So VRED is also capable of ray tracing. I'll just show you what happens when you turn ray tracing on. Takes a second here. And then you can see the lighting gets a bit more dramatic. I'd have to turn off the shadow plane. Actually here, I'll just turn off the shadow plane so you can see it. So the shadow becomes a little more accurate. It's more directional to where the sun is. But you get that real grainy look that KeyShot tends to have, and it can get muddy really quick. So I actually prefer to do. And then the other thing is the renderings take a very long time with ray tracing because the computer has to figure out all of that stuff. The fact that I've baked the shadows onto the body surfaces means now it's in real time. I don't have to update those things. And so the rendering is going to take only a few seconds to do. I'll show you in real time how long this takes. So I'm just going to hit render, and I'm going to do F347. That's going to call it that, and then you can save it out as a PNG or a JPEG, doesn't matter. And you can see how quickly it's rendering. I mean, it's literally just takes seconds to render. So I can just once I have everything set up, I can just rattle off images, image after image in many different perspectives. I can try different environments, different lighting, and very quickly, and I think it's great to be able to do that because then you kind of get to pick and choose which perspectives show off the vehicle the best without a lot of risk in terms of your time. The problem with KeyShot is you have to invest a lot of time in each rendering attempt, and it can get very time consuming. So I know there's a lot of upfront work with VRED to deal with all the baking and unbaking and all of that, but at the end of the day, it saves a lot of time. Now, what about interiors? So I'm going to go to the interior. And let's start with field of view. For an interior, I'll set it to like, let's say 55. And now I can zoom in on that interior, peer through the glass, and I have a pretty good view of, overall view of the interior. So, and then what's cool is you can still see you can still see what's going on outside the vehicle. Now it's a little bit dark, so the view out the window is a little bit dark, and that's because we're looking through the tinted glass. So what I'm going to do is just select the glass. I'm going to make it disappear, and you can see now it's a much more vibrant look outside the window. Now, one thing you'll notice with VRED is when you're doing it this way, where you're just baking light and shadows, you can see there's actually no cast shadows. So you don't see the IP casting a shadow on the door or on the floor or anything like that. And that's something that a lot of designers like to have in their interiors. I'll just show you what happens if I turn on ray tracing with the interior. And it'll take a minute here. Okay, so yes, you have cast shadows. However, as with Keyshot, you get this really dark, muddy look to everything. It's all really grainy and really dark. You got to play around with the settings, to really try to get it vibrant again. So I really just don't like to mess around with ray tracing. This is much more bright and vibrant, and it's just as easy for me, rather than trying to mess around with the settings and all of this trial and error. This is just go into Photoshop and just sketch in some cast shadows after the fact. So it only takes a few minutes to throw some paths down and just sketch out some quick shadows. So let's say this is the view I like. I will hit the render button, and I'll call this interior 6. And you'll see just as quickly as I did the exterior, it's rendering the interior. So that's another thing with Keyshot, is if you're or any sort of ray tracing application, if you're trying to render a very complex shape like an interior, like a complex series of objects, all of those ray trace elements bouncing off each other can just take a lot of computing power and a lot of time. The fact that everything is already sort of baked and worked out in the shaders means that it renders very quickly in almost real time. So very, very quickly I can have very, very nice image. So I'll just show you really quick in Photoshop what happens. How do I go about adding these cast shadows? So right now I'm opening Photoshop, and you can see I'll just show you just a quick technique for generating those cast shadows. So I'm just going to open this file. Okay, so here's the interior image that I just created. And what I'm going to do is add, go into my layers. So I've got my layers. Yes, my layers are right here on the other screen. So add a new layer. I'm going to set the transparency at maybe just under 40% or 40%. And then just using my ink tool, set it to shape, set it to fill in black with no stroke. And I'm just going to sketch in a really quick shadow, and then just sort of wind that around this table here. And yeah, I want to cast a little bit of a shadow on this armrest as well. Just work its way around the IP. Don't have to be too careful. So now, you can see, it's a very quick and dirty way of generating a cast shadow, but it's effective, very effective. So that's all you need to do. And then usually what I like to do is also add a little bit of noise. This is just for interiors. I like to add a little bit of noise, and what that does is it just gives everything a bit more of a tactile quality, just a little more texture, a little more tactile, without having to get too deep into like leather patterns and things like that. So so that's how I generate a pretty nice interior image in VRED. So that concludes this demo. Thanks for watching, and hope to catch you again next time at CARDESIGN.ACADEMY.